Hello and welcome to the next instalment of our Operational Resilience campaign. For today's podcast, I'm welcomed by our lead consultant, Dom House, and wealth consultants, Joe Fulford and Price. Our Ops Resilience campaign focuses attention on readiness for March 2025, where after years of planning and implementation, firms need to operate within their set tolerances. As part of the campaign, we cover scenario planning, tolerances, investment impacts, third-party management, and embedding the Ops Resilience framework. So be sure to look out for our series of blogs, podcasts over the next couple of weeks to find out more. The overarching theme for today's discussion is around the investment needed to ensure readiness, and we explore some of the options and hopefully offer some insightful considerations which can benefit firms financially without the huge upfront costs. Joe, if I can come to you first, what do you think firms can do to address vulnerabilities that will ensure compliance, but not necessarily come with a big financial investment?
Hi, Chris. Thanks. It's a good question. And there are so many opportunities existing organisations can use to improve their resilience and reduce vulnerabilities that really don't need huge investments. I've read quite a lot about the need to invest heavily in new technologies and to ensure resilience. But for me, I think there is still a lot that organisations can do by looking at their existing resources and optimising these first. Operational resilience is best achieved, I think we'll all agree, through a robust framework that is embedded within a firm's overall risk approach. But to do this, there is first that fundamental need to understand the end-to-end connections between products, services, and customers. Once you know what those are, you can see where you need to improve your response and recovery capabilities. So firms should be reviewing any vulnerabilities that are caused primarily by people and processes. At a most basic level, if there is a key person dependency, either in a particular process or a skill set, or processes themselves that are clunky and cause delays or customer dissatisfaction, then those can often be addressed without huge budgets and will likely lead to additional benefits at the bottom line along the way. So if you are a firm and you haven't got a big budget for new technology, dedicating your existing resources to those basics of developing and delivering robust customer experiences by ensuring that you have the right people to perform the transactions that your customers need in the most efficient way will address those core vulnerabilities that support operational resilience compliance. There is, of course, always going to be that need or that opportunity, if you like, for to improve resilience further through replacement technologies. But if you do that once you've sorted out the practical day-to-day transactions that make up the foundations of your operation, it will likely mean that you spend more wisely and potentially save money in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. You make some really key points there. And implementing change doesn't always have to mean introducing new technologies, which obviously we know are a significant financial cost
Yeah.
and burden and impact onto particularly operational people and staff. I'm really pleased you called out the human aspect of this as well. A lot of the companies and firms that we've gone in, we can see there is key person dependencies kind of almost in most teams as well. So
Yeah.
that's absolutely something that should be at the forefront of operational resilience thinking as well. So moving on a little, tolerances play a major part in operational resilience, and this factors in recovery time, risk appetite, through to the point of impact tolerance and where intolerable harm is likely to be caused. So Dom, one for you here. Once tolerances have been identified, how should firms prioritize their actions to avoid foreseeable harm to customers and also to protect the market?
Yeah, sure. So I think obviously ultimately the firms need to be able to evidence that they can operate within the tolerances at all times from that March 2025 deadline, and they need to have built in the sufficient resilience they need to kind of act before the tolerances have been breached. I think in terms of prioritization, it's at times it can feel like everything is a priority for firms, but they should be looking at the FCA principles, the consumer outcomes, as part of Consumer Duty. So they can think about priorities in different ways. So it could be the vulnerability of customers, it could be the volume of customers impacted or the financial impact it might be. There's also kind of risk elements to this, thinking about how customers' services might be impacted and disrupted. Thinking about integrity of data, and consumer confidence within that. So firms need to be able to kind of think about how all of those different elements of prioritization should be factored in, and it may be that they need to think about it differently depending on which process it might be. So depending on whether it's to do with customer contact, whether it's to do with ability to transact, may have different elements that they need to think about. Ultimately, the resilience needs to be considered in a kind of holistic way. So like Joe said, it can impact on people, it can impact on processes, supply chains, external parties, dependencies, and technology that need to be factored in as well. So there's a lot for firms to think about. The operational resilience is all about minimizing the harm to customers and the markets as well. So thinking about how prioritization should be considering anticipating disruption, how they can work to prevent it, recover from it, and also thinking about future plans. Continuous improvement is massively important here, so that they don't just consider the last impact and how that's going to play out again, but also thinking about the future, what kind of impacts may present itself going forward, so that they kind of have that kind of operational resilience focus within the firm's culture, so that they have that agility and they are able to respond and adapt to change at any point.
Yeah, some really good points there. And one that you mentioned, particularly around continuous improvement, obviously the Opta Resilience initiative is something that has been, we're about 3 years into it now. So firms should be pretty much along the lines in terms of starting to think about what their testing scenarios are looking like, etc., ready for that March date. Just a bit of a follow-up question on that. Over a 3-year period, you can probably expect firms to have significant transformative change, which is going on within their companies as well. And obviously that comes with its own priorities. Do you feel that Ops Resilience actually should form part of any strategic thinking, any transformative programs and initiatives which are going on as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think with all of these kind of wider scale changes that have happened over a few years, obviously, what the situation that the firm faced at the beginning when they first had to think about operational resilience and what the impacts could be, that's going to change over time as new initiatives come through, as new situations present themselves. So firms need to be able to have that kind of constant monitoring and oversight of how the overall business, the overall change landscape that they're going through has to factor in operational resilience. So it's not a one and done approach at all. It needs to be constantly evolving and embedding that within the culture of the firm, so that these considerations are, they're thought of when new programs are in their infancy. The sooner that they understand and impact assess them, the better, so that they can, there's not as much retrospective application. It's more about being proactive and managing those changes as they go through.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think something that kind of runs alongside of that, and you've already mentioned it as well, is consumer duty. I know here we've seen lots of great work being done with our clients on that front and within the wider industry as well. So just coming back to yourself, Joe, and with that kind of consumer duty hat on, do you think there's any aspects of consumer duty that can be leveraged or adapted to enhance operational resilience compliance?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think as Dom's mentioned, it's not just consumer duty, but also the vulnerable customers framework as well. Firms can absolutely start to leverage their learns from those initiatives and any other initiatives that have come before. This will allow them to save time and effort, but also ensure that they're delivering that new regulatory change in a way that is aligned to the initiatives that run parallel to and not instead of initiatives that have come before them. So as Dom was talking about there, that continuous improvement and embedding of the culture of regulation and compliance with that as regulations evolve. One example of where we can see this, and it's more of a correlation in principles, is aligned to the FCA's dispute resolution principles. That in those, there is a spectrum of factors that can lead to a dispute and a spectrum of resolutions according to how the customer is impacted. Consumer Duty places a real importance on that spectrum and how it can be different for different customers and processes. If we look at operational resilience, then scenario testing and setting impact tolerances can also be viewed in a similar way. So there'll be a spectrum of scenarios for disruption, which will define the different tolerance levels alongside a range of actions, which are then required to reduce vulnerabilities or mitigate foreseeable harm. Another example is if you look specifically at Consumer Duty is the customer support principle. So that the work that's gone in on the Consumer Duty in that space has already identified potentially important business services for firms. So transactions such as switches, transfers, benefits processing, complaints and cancellations. So those transactions in particular could lead to barriers caused by disruptions, which could adversely affect both customer outcomes or market integrity. In more practical terms, then firms can also use existing processes such as BIAs. So they should already have those as part of their suite of tools to use. So they could use those to determine impact tolerances, but be mindful of that in as much as they probably won't go far enough to achieve the outcomes of preventing harm to customers or the market. The focus of the BIA is obviously on recovery time objectives and not necessarily on the consequences of the disruption to servicing customer needs or identifying any vulnerable customer characteristics. So for me, I think the connection across the variety of regulation that's come in the last sort of 4 or 5 years is that connection between the focus on prevention of intolerable harm and safeguarding customer interests. To conclude, I would say that operational resilience, of course, has its own set of discrete outcomes. We can't get away from that. There are differences in what the expectations are, but in terms of the principles to embed and the practice of complying with regulations in the right way, then there is a lot that firms can do based on what they've done before to embed that practice as more of a holistic approach.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you very much for that, Jo. And I think there's a big emphasis and underlying theme there around the regulation, implementing it in the right way,
Yeah.
how that can be consumed. Is it something that we can easily adapt to as well? And that kind of leads on to the next question. And Anne, I'd like to come over to yourself for this one. Again, keeping with that regulation type theme, do you think they are going far enough? So obviously, Jo's touched on the underlying principles, etc., which are all set out in the framework. Or actually, do you think there's still some gaps in terms of maintaining resilience?
Thanks, Chris. When we look at the UK operational resilience regulations, especially alongside frameworks like Consumer Duty and Value for Money, the idea is to embed resilience at the very culture of these organisations, changing how they think, plan and manage risks. The focus here is putting the customer and market protection right at the heart of everything. This pushes firms not to just react to problems, but proactively spot and reduce harm across all areas, whether it's marketing, product design, sales, or customer service. I think, however, while these regulations set seemingly clear expectations, there are still some gaps in maintaining resilience. Let's start off with resource allocation. That's a big challenge. A lot of organizations are struggling to juggle so many business as usual tasks and strategic projects that they struggle to give ops resilience the attention and resources it really needs. And post March 2025, it's not going to be a one-off project. It's about making a lasting cultural shift, and that needs proper investment, time and money. And then there's, say, awareness and training. There's often a gap here too. Everyone in the in the organization should understand what operational resilience is, why it matters, and what to do when something goes wrong. As Dom highlighted earlier, this isn't a one and done kind of thing. It requires ongoing, relevant training that's updated regularly and for different parts of the business. This includes having clear procedures and ensuring employees know where to find and use the necessary information. Practicing scenarios, even unlikely ones, will help organizations to respond better during a natural crisis. I think finally it's important to touch on the gap around technology and automation. A lot of operational processes are still designed more for efficiency than resilience. I think this means companies often rely too much on fixing things after they go wrong rather than putting in automated systems that can prevent issues from happening in the first place. So key processes really need to be reviewed and updated to make sure they're up to the task when disruptions happen. We can even take this kind of a step further and look at how confident we are in understanding these regulatory expectations. I think it's a bit of a mixed bag. Larger firms with their dedicated teams usually have a better grasp on these regulations. They're often ahead of the curve, integrating resilience into their day-to-day operations. But kind of even these big players face challenges. Despite having the resources, they struggle with siloed operations where different teams or departments might not be fully aligned. This can lead to inconsistencies in how resilience measures are applied across the organization, which is a big risk if not properly managed. In short, I think we're on the right path, but I still think there's lots of work to do to ensure everyone's keeping up and that the entire industry is as resilient as it needs to be. Thanks, Chris.
Great, thanks very much for that, and no, you bring to life some kind of really key and pivotal things there, and I think there's a common theme throughout all of this as well, that it's not just that one and done activity, it's not just a project, it's just not a multi-year program. This needs to be ingrained within the culture of a firm, and ultimately it's up to all staff to have a general understanding through detailed and accurate training that how do they react to this stuff? What is their first course of action? What does the communication approach look like? So there's multiple different ways of looking at this, and multiple different aspects that firms need to consider. And we, as I say, we're only 6 months or so away from that date. So there's an awful lot that needs to be done ahead of implementation. So that does conclude today's podcast. So a big thank you to Dom, Joe and Ant for sharing your views and your perspectives on operational resilience. Be sure to follow the rest of our operational resilience campaign via LinkedIn and on our website. And if you need any support around resilience, readiness, implementation, don't hesitate to get in touch with us. Thank you.